Amnesiasc taking on DrHippi from Europe.
My next opponent is DrHippi from Virtus Pro. I would consider him, alongside myself and a couple others, to be the best players in the tournament, so yeah, this should be a pretty tough match.
My next opponent is Amnesiasc. He is a good player.
Well, I know that he is bringing a Ban Warrior strategy. I'm playing a Ban Warrior strategy, so those are going to cancel out. But I have some big percentage against his Shaman deck. Like in the Mirror match, I'm definitely favored, which will help me a lot. And I think in the Druid matchup, it's actually an identical Mirror, so there's not much edge there. We have a lot of very close matchups, but I think that my slight edge in the Shaman Mirror might come in big.
I'm not pressured at all.
I'm definitely going to make sure I know all 120 cards he's playing to a T, like I did for Yulsik. Good luck, have fun, don't cry too much when I win.
Don't cry too much when I win.
To Amnesiasc. До свидания.
Welcome back everyone to the third series of the day, and the one I personally am most excited for. Sol, you ready for this?
I cannot wait. I mean, I don't know if DrHippi will be crying if he loses. I think I'll be crying if DrHippi loses. It's packs down the drain. It's European pride down the drain for me, but more important stakes are set for these two players. The winner of this has a spot in the elimination stage, the top 8 at BlizzCon itself.
Yeah, and both players very confident going into this series. You saw a bit of smack talk in the video there, which is a lot of fun to see from these two players. And you know, as Amnesiasc was alluding to, this is a very close series in terms of actual lineups. You can see, you know, almost mirrored with the warrior bands on both sides. Some slight variations in some lists. How do you think those variations are going to impact the series?
Yeah, so both players have ended up with similar deck lists because they've brought the same strategy to this tournament, which is ban warrior, soft target shaman. They have slightly different tech ideas on how to achieve that. DrHippi's packing Arcane Explosion in his Tempo Mage, for example, and Amnesiasc has that twist on the Shaman deck, the Kobold Geomancers, which as soon as I saw that, I tested it out. So useful in the Shaman Mirror, but right now we are going to be looking at Tempo Mage up against the aggressive Face Secret Hunter from DrHippi. I can't wait to get this one started. Let's do it.
Yeah, me neither. And, you know, in this matchup overall, I do feel like a lot is decided very early on. You know, both decks have the ability to pressure very quickly, and I feel like the one who runs away with it early on normally just gets the advantage. It's too much to come back from either deck, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a very big deal. Fight for early board control is huge in this matchup, and this combination of cards that we see in DrHippi's hand, the Cloaked Huntress and the 2 secrets, one of which being Cat Trick against one of the most spell-heavy decks in the game. That's going to be huge for trying to break this early board tension.
Yeah, the Cat Trick's value is really going to depend on if Amnesiasc can actually clear it off on the same turn he can proc it, which is, as you said, spell-heavy deck, very easy to do a lot of the time. Flamewaker, one of the scary minions, you know, versus Cat Trick because of just the extra pings it provides, but Amnesiasc does not have a Flamewaker at the moment. He does have double mana work. Oh my god, sorry. This is so funny. Earlier on, these two were outside, and Amnesiasc,
yes.
Yeah, you were there.
Yes.
Amnesiasc, right, we were just talking, and then right before Amnesiasc walks off, he just goes to DrHippi. So, okay, I'm going to draw Mana Worm every time.
I'm going to draw so many Mana Worms, were the words, and this is, in fact, the maximum amount of Mana Worms he could have drawn, so...
This is also a huge amount of secrets that DrHippi can use in combination with the Cloaked Huntress. Definitely one of my favorite cards at the moment, as it just allows you to do truly silly things with using so much mana in a single turn early on.
Yeah, silly is definitely the word for it. This is so much, you know, so many innovates being cast here, essentially, to put it into Druid terms. One of the most powerful classes when it comes down to cheating mana into play. And
is that how we're casting now? We're going to put everything to Druid terms?
Sure.
The terms everyone can understand.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone's been tortured by Druid, right? It's relatable, at least.
Yeah, and now we're going to see how Amnesiasc chooses to actually sort of negotiate his traps here and what he can get proc. So there is the Cat Trick with the coin, nothing too surprising. Has 2 Frost Bolts, Arcane Missiles, Torch, or even just a working a ping somewhere. But he does really have to think about how he's going to kill this cat, because it is wearing a hat.
Sure is, and there's an interesting twist between the two decks here where Amnesiasc actually had a little bit more work to do to discover what these secrets are, because Hippie's list is playing 1 Snake, 1 Snipe, 2 Explosives, 1 Freezing, 2 Cats, like so many different individual secrets in there. Amnesiasc's list himself, just 2 Cat, 2 Explosing, 2 Freezing. Much more straight up, easier to identify what those secrets are.
Yeah, I really like the not attack there from the Mana Worms, because the Explosive just blows out the taunts. You can see the mirror images on the right, and that means that the 2 minions that are actually still on the board for Hippie, the Cat and the Granny, is going to be able to attack in, whereas this turn he's just like, well, yeah, attack into the taunts if you want, and then I'll attack and get even more damage later on.
Yeah, it was a catch-22 situation for Amnesiasc there with the attacks, because like I said, he knows there's Explosive Trap and Snake Trap in the list, so even choosing to trade with the Mana Worms could have cost him dearly with the Snake Trap coming out. So I agree, great decision to hold, and he puts himself in a much stronger position to be able to advance his board state this turn.
And with all the burn in hand, this also reveals the Cat in the Hat, or would have if it was used to trade to open up for easy removal, and DrHippi is too smart for this shenanigan.
Way too smart for that nonsense. DrHippi definitely has another echelon of play to reach towards based on what we saw from him yesterday. Wasn't quite in his final form, but looks like he's playing a lot more focused today so far.
Yeah, he's going to have to really get a lot of use out the next few turns, though, in terms of his card draw, because Leroy is not what you are after right about now. This is a bit of a problem. The only benefit he could have going forward is that if the snakes get procced and not cleared up, he can actually use them to trade into the whelps that Leroy will create, and then make it just that little bit more difficult for Amnesiasc to clear it up.
Yep, Amnesiasc, though, from his part, Frostbolt's away on the 3-2.
Does he still pass? Yes. Yes, he does.
It's possible.
These Mana Worms are getting scary.
They are. I mean, he's really trying to find a way to use these Mana Worms for a greater use here than just proccing that Explosive Trap and having them traded off. And as you said, DrHippi's hand just running dry right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a big problem, actually. And this is just such an already high-level game. The restraint Amnesiasc shown by just not attacking him with these Mana Worms, which he had out pretty much from turn 2, and have been steadily gaining more and more attack, and already presenting 10 damage, and they would survive the Explosive, but it would mean that good trades would happen with the Cat Trick. So both players really just trying to edge just a little bit more to get ahead in this matchup.
Yeah, this is a much tougher decision for DrHippi here in terms of the value of his Cat in the Hat, because he could use the Cat in the Hat to clear out the taunt and then put 1 damage onto the Mana Worm, which would mean there's no chance of him ever taking that damage to face with the Explosive Trap held up in play. But DrHippi just really playing around, really wants to get a clean attack off with that Cat in the Hat, either to face or taking out a minion for good value. And Amnesiasc could just pick up a Flame Waker to punish this at any point. Already that Arcane Missile's in hand that we can see, so he's so close to a potential blowout. But DrHippi just riding a fine line here, and so far it's working out well for him. This game, 2 aggressive decks just holding a weird stalemate right now.
Yeah, it's very scary for DrHippi, as you said, because the longer the game goes on, the more chance of a Flame Waker coming out. And if you never attack with that Cat, then you may as well not bother with the secret in the, in the long run, other than the sort of counterplay it's generated in itself. But Eaglehorn Bow is going to really help DrHippi out, as it opens up his options way more. Easy to kill off the mirror image now, and then he can pick and choose his targets.
Yeah, so now we'll get a lot more information about DrHippi's plan in this game. Does he create some small trades into the Mana Worm to make them not threats at hitting him in the face? Does he want to take care of the Acolyte? Is he worried about the opponent's card draw? Where exactly is he looking for that Cat in the Hat to connect after holding it in stealth for so long? So this Eaglehorn Bow draw opens up so many lines for DrHippi, and we'll see which one he goes down here.
Yeah, and also as well, you need to bear in mind there is Snakes and Explosive Trap active. The bow is only going to get better as time goes on, and there might even be a line where DrHippi actually just tries to go aggressive. He's got Leroy in hand.
Yeah,
that's a hell of a lot of damage.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm alluding to when I say what is his intention with this 4-2 Cat. And yeah, the intentions are signaled very, very clearly there. His intention is face emphatically jamming in all the damage he can. Bow goes as well. Already Leroy in hand. That's 6 more hero powers to work in as well. Plus, remember, the guaranteed or almost guaranteed 2 he has from that Explosive Trap.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We've maybe been speaking about Explosive Trap in terms of how it affects the board state. at the end of the day, it's still 2 damage to face whenever the attack comes in, and that's definitely something to calculate. Something I know you like to talk about a lot is when playing at Face Hunter, it's all about counting damage constantly to work out how many turns of hero power you need to win the game, and that is really the whole matchup here. And DrHippi is really working on how much damage he can get in with this Leroy going forward, but those are 2 very, very scary mana worms.
They are, and this might just start off the race. DrHippi might have just gone too soon here. His read might have been from the slow turns that we saw from Amnesiac, that there wasn't a great deal of removal in hand.
Imagine Unleash this turn.
Unleash huge. But right now,
worst draw.
He's just facing down lethal on board, and with no reasonable way to address a mana worm, DrHippi may have gone to the well too early here and could have cost himself this opening game.
Yeah, you know, DrHippi's really suffered so far this game. Initially with having just Leroy in hand so early when you just know you can't play it. And then the bow, literally the worst draw in the whole deck for him now, with his bow being on double charges as well. Has to use it to kill off a mana worm.
Yeah, I mean, any spell at this point, I believe, is just lethal. Yeah, any spell that he can play alongside a ping would be lethal. So it's an absolutely microscopic out for DrHippi. He goes for it nonetheless. And yeah, I think what happened that game is that DrHippi, he had minions on board for so long that Amnesiac was refusing to trade into. And since those minions weren't being removed with spells, he got the read that there wasn't a heavy removal hand from Amnesiac, because the play that he made loses immediately to a lot of removal. Even then, he still had perhaps a quick shot out to win the game, but was the push too early for him? That's the question. We'll have to think about it some more, Raven.
Yeah, definitely. This series already off to a fantastic start, but we will work out how it's going to go straight after this.
The Hearthstone World Championship is sponsored in part.
When you walk up on the stage to play your first match against Yulsik, are you going to be nervous?
Probably not. I think I'm going to win. Young Savage doesn't lose.
One problem that I see with you playing at BlizzCon is that your name is really hard to chant.
You know what has less syllables, DJ?
If you walk out on stage and everybody's chanting your name, are you going to be nervous?
Young Savage doesn't get nervous.
There's been a lot of hype around you over the course of the year. A lot of players, as they've seen new players qualify, they'll still say, you know, I think Amnesiac's probably, you know, one of the favorites to win the whole thing. How do you feel about that?
I think it's cool. I mean, I don't disagree with them, honestly. I definitely feel like I'm one of the strongest players at this tournament. I'm not just looking to make it out of groups or make it to semis. I'm definitely looking to win the whole thing.
If you make it out of groups and you play in front of, you know, thousands of people, does that make you nervous?
That just sounds cool.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. What if you're playing against me on the big stage at BlizzCon?
I don't think I get free wins at BlizzCon, TJ. Usually go by Amnesiac. Sometimes I go by Young Savage. When the goings get tough, I'm Captain America.
TJ still recovering from that burn.
Yeah, I mean, why do you think you haven't seen him for the last 3 days? Like, Amnesiac, the Young Savage himself, has just put him in the hospital with how savagely he ruined him.
Yeah, and he's planning to do the same to DrHippi by the looks of things. He is 1-0 up with his mage, but still a long way to go. It's a best of 7, and you know, many more games to come. I hope, at least. This is a series I definitely want to go to every single match.
Oh, for sure, yeah, and it's going to primarily come down to the 2 Shaman decks. Both of these lineups, as we mentioned, are soft-targeting Shaman with the tech choices that they have, so the player that's able to get his Shaman deck through most easily is going to be in a comfortable position in the series, even if the scoreline doesn't immediately reflect that at the time that it happens.
Yeah, and we are going to get into game 2. DrHippi using his Tempo Mage now versus Amnesiac's Druid. And you know, what are the points in DrHippi's Mage that are really going to get some work done in the Druid list?
Well, DrHippi's Tempo Mage, I mean, he has a copy of Arcane Explosion, which again is aimed at Shaman. He is only playing 1 Firelands Portal. Firelands Portal is a pretty solid card to have against Druid. You can kill Fandral with it, and Azure Drake has a great interaction with it against Ancient of Wars and things like that. But also just a Ragnaros in the list that Amnesiac's choosing not to play, which is hugely effective against Druid, particularly because Amnesiac's Druid list is not running a Mulch.
Yeah, I completely agree. The Ragnaros can actually get so much work done as just that last-ditch effort, that late-game push. But to get the late game, he needs a pretty good start, and DrHippi is looking pretty decent at the moment.
Yeah, it looks like it's just going to be the Wrath coming out here. Takes care of the Mana Worm. DrHippi drew a Mana Worm of his own, but there was the clean answer for it. But his hand is looking pretty reasonable at this point. Can curve out for a little while here. Cult Sorcerer, Acolyte, a Drake on a later turn as well. So decent pressure early on. DrHippi just considering his options here. He could have gone coin 3 into 3 at that point, but preserving the coin now that he has gaps in his curve, right? He has a gap before he can play Drake. He then has another gap before he can play Firelands Portal. So I think he wants to preserve the coin for that, as well as just the value that you get out of coin as Tempo Mage as just a combo card.
Yeah, and we've seen this playstyle like more and more in general of the way to approach Tempo Mage. It definitely has the ability to just snowball early on and just murder your opponent, but it also has the ability to go late game and get the value from the deck as well, and that's what DrHippi is doing with cards like Acolyte in the deck now becoming more and more common. It means you can just draw more cards in general, have a bigger hand size, and have way more options late in the game.
Yeah, he's just chilling for now, just developing small annoying threats that need to be dealt with. Each of these minions has presented a small question to Amnesiasc. Mana Worm threatened to get out of control and push too much damage. Cold Sorcerer offers too much value for the removal spells if Amnesiasc wanted to develop into it at some point. And now if this Acolyte of Pain isn't dealt with, suddenly it's just, you know, self-ping, draw a million cards, out-resource the opponent. So this is not what Amnesiasc wanted to be spending his opening turns doing, but sometimes against Tempo Mage it's just necessary to just kill all their stuff.
Yeah, what did you think about the Wrath there, or the lack of, should I say? He could have just Wrath hero-powered, saved the swipe for a bigger impact later, but he chose to just play out on curve in terms of, you know, curving out with his cards as opposed to his hero power. So
Wrath is two things. Wrath is cheaper, more flexible, can be combined with Fandral for an easy combo turn, but also if you look at his hand, there's a very real possibility that we see Nourish for mana next turn, because he just has two huge bombs in his hand. If he nourishes for mana next turn, suddenly keeping that Wrath means that he has something to do with his 2 remaining mana.
Yeah, and even, like you said, the flexibility of just cycling into other stuff, because this is a very... Whoa, there we go. All the fiery rage minions coming out there. And yeah, there we go. We're going to Wrath into mana, be able to use the Wrath to... Nourish into mana, be able to use the Wrath to clear up that Mana Worm. And
Wrath into mana and then cast Nourish for 3 damage. That's what he did, right?
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. That's exactly what happened. I will not believe anyone who tells me otherwise. But now DrHippi, we can see, you know, with all the card draw and cycle he had, with even just getting the 1 from the Acolyte, 2 from the Intellect, he still has a lot of options going forward. Could just drop the Drake at this point.
Could do, yeah. He does have a lot of, you know, individual resources in his hand, but they're all quite low-value resources. It'd be very possible to just burn through this hand all in one go, and that's something that he might have to do on a future turn. And my concern with playing the Drake here is that your opponent just ramped for mana, which is slightly unusual in this deck these days. So ramping for mana directly into 8, what does that say to you? It says Ragnaros, right? So if he plays Rag, you don't want his Rag to snipe your Azure Drake. You want to be able to snipe his Rag with Drake, Arcane Blast, Coin, Arcane Blast.
Yeah, or Arcane Blast again just for fun. Because he did get another one off the Babbling Book, but now there's a really good turn for DrHippi as a response to this Emperor, which will be to coin out Firelands, which is such a great card. 5 damage, super clean kill on the Emperor, and develops a minion of his own, which at this point, falling a little bit behind on minions is really important.
Heyo, it's 100% swing on the board. 5/5 died, 5/5 appeared on the other side of the board. That is the very definition of tempo in a deck that is sometimes erroneously called Tempo Mage. In this case, it's doing the job, and now the Rag's going to come down. It needs to kill this 5/5. Or the Drew. Okay, that's huge. Because if the 5/5 was alive, with this Drake double blast turn that I'm sure we're going to see coming now, if the extra 5/5 was still alive, that might just be too much oppression for Amnesiasc to deal with.
Yeah, he could have gone blast arcane missiles just to be flashy, but a little bit cleaner to play the Drake, obviously developing a minion on the board as well. And another arcane intellect, and slowly but surely, DrHippi is actually putting together a good amount of burn damage. You know, flexible as removal, of course, but having Torch, Frostbolt, it's actually pretty decent.
Can he live with all these bombs, though? That's the question. We saw this in the previous series where it was a bomb chain situation against Tempo Mage, and we just saw Malagos just thrown out onto the board early. Amnesiac deciding to go down to a different line here, holding on to his Malagos as the final threat that he drops in the chain of huge bombs, which I like a lot more. But DrHippi, with these Drake on board, Drake in hand, he has gas for days in terms of removing minions right now.
Yeah, and the additional Arcane Blast from the Babbling Book is actually pretty huge. He can just spend 3 mana this turn, kill off the Arcane Giant, and frankly, do whatever the hell he wants with the rest of the mana.
Yeah, he can also choose to Arcane Blast for 6 with the second Drake. Does that get him anywhere? Not particularly, right? Unless
It becomes way too risky with missiles if you want to try and clear it up.
Exactly. You'd be looking at 6 damage Arcane Blast into a 5 damage missiles with 7 health remaining on the board. So, yeah, that doesn't look too pretty. But, yeah, the Arcane Blast pickup off the Babbling Book, definitely a huge deal.
Yeah, he could even start with the Arcane Intellect
Yeah,
as well,
I think that's the plan.
which you have so much free mana, then why not? Unless he wants to use a lot of his burn as removal, clear the board, and just let the Drake sit around.
Yeah, if he's not Arcane Intellecting here, I can only assume we're going to see the Forgotten Torch used as well. Yeah, that does seem to be the case. So now he's getting a good solid clear together on the board, retaining this Drake. And he saw from Amnesiac, Amnesiac didn't have a way to answer this Drake last turn. It does still now have some damage on it from the 2-2, but still a solid answer.
Play around, Geddon.
This is one of the tech inclusions. It's targeted at Shaman, but this is the idea of a soft target, right? You include tech cards that are strong against the one deck you're pointing at, but aren't weak in other matchups. And you see here, Geddon just doing a great job in this matchup as well.
Yeah, DrHippi does have an answer with the use of that second Drake, a Frostbolt into Ping to clear off the Geddon and develop a Drake again. And also, as you said, when we saw that Amnesiac kind of struggled with the first Drake and then conveniently had Geddon to clear off the, the 2 health on it, the second Drake's got to prove a problem, right?
Yeah.
More than likely, he's already seen a swipe.
The question here is Frostbolt Ping or Fireball, because again, similar situation to we had before with the Wrath, right, where he used the swipe, 4 mana removal spell, 2 mana removal spell. Frostbolt is more flexible to pair with Flamewakers, for example, that you have in your deck. Still have 2 of them, I believe. Haven't seen 1 drawn this game, so.
I do think I like the Frostbolt though, because Fireball's just higher impact.
Sure.
On it, like imagine another Arcane Giant. You really want to just be able to just kill off anything, and you utilize Ping as well instead of having to go all in on the Fireball. But Malagos is going to hit the board, and this is not the first time we've seen Amnesiac slam a Mali down, and just to see what happens. Although this time he pretty much had limited choices here.
Yeah, I think he was just out of options at that point. Just the Maya Keeper on its own seemed like it was going to be way too weak, so just needed a 4-12 on the board, and DrHippi now preserving that Fireball. That's 7 damage onto the Malagos, so he has a nice clear. Does cost him his Drake, but that Mali has to go down at all costs. That feels like the one way you're going to lose this game right now.
He could Arcane Intellect as well to get the, potentially even more burn to clear it off without having to use the Drake.
Sure.
Although I don't know how much he's even got left at the moment.
Yeah, he's used a huge amount of removal already, right? There's a Roaring Torch that he's put in his deck from the Forgotten Torch.
True.
And there's a second Fireball, I believe, as well, but that's not much use to him. So see how DrHippi does choose to address this.
Didn't get anything too wild from Babbling Book. Ice Barrier is going to be nice just for the additional health, because pretty sure the minions are going to attack at some point. But not too impactful this turn at least. But Flamewaker, speaking of impactful, it's a pretty impactful card itself.
Yeah, so it looks like DrHippi is leaning towards developing the Cult Sorcerer here and just fireballing it for 8 and then trading. This contests at least the 2-2 on the board, allows him to start clearing this up. I'm not sure if this was entirely necessary since he has a Flame Strike in his hand anyway, so does he need to give value to these minions on board? Speaking of value, when you have an empty hand, drawing a Nourish seems good.
Imagine if he hadn't have killed Malagos off this turn and relied on the next turn. That is insane. Worked out extremely well for DrHippi as Amnesiac is able to actually almost, fill his hand back up, get some value here, clear off the board. But I heard Flame Strike is pretty good versus a board like this.
Yeah, it seems like a reasonable answer. And Amnesiac did choose to use extra resources instead of just taking the trades on board. Had 2-2 into a 3-2, but chose to play resources from hand to deal with the 3-2 on board. So that does play into Flame Strike a little bit more. But this is something that I've seen Amnesiasc say a great deal during his practice sessions, which is he only plays one. I'm gonna risk it because he only plays one. We saw it earlier. Emperor came down straight into DrHippi's turn 7. Got hit by Firelands Portal. He only plays one.
That's the mantra to go by. But I do love the lack of Flame Waker that turn, to be honest, because the ping means that he didn't need to play Flame Waker. Flame Waker would have just gained him 2 damage to face, and on 28 it would have done very, very little, whereas this means he can at least combo Flame Waker with Ice Barrier, Missiles, Apprentice, if he really wants, but he can actually just hold off at this point. A lot of the big threats from Amnesiasc are gone.
Am I completely crazy, or is there an Arcane Giant on the board right now that we're not seeing?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
Oh my god, imagine a truly stealthed Arcane Giant, unless you're keeping up, you don't know it's there.
Okay, hey!
Poof. Flare.
Yeah.
So, now there is an Arcane Giant on the board to think about from DrHippi, and not too many great answers. As Arcane Explosion is not, just 1 damage, gets the effect from the Flame Waker for an additional 2, but not really enough. You just play Barrier this turn and just say, okay, 1 for 1 turn.
Well, that's the thing. Does he want to try and use the Barrier as part of his Flame Waker turn? Because I think based on his play last turn, I think that's what you have to assume, because he Flame Striked and then just passed, pinged away. If he had 10 mana on the previous turn and not 9, I'm not actually quite sure when the players hit 10 mana, but if he's been holding on to the Ice Barrier for this long and continues to hold on to it here, it seems like he does want to pair that together with his Flame Waker.
Yeah, and again, this is what a weird game towards the end here. Not really sure what's going on because both players are just hero powering past, although there's an Arcane Giant on the board. A second Flame Waker is going to be huge here, is really going to provide the muscle to clear up this 8-7.
So Apprentice is looking like the play here as well. So now he can only play one of Ice Barrier and Arcane Explosion.
But he can decide afterwards, which is important.
Exactly. So 3 missiles plus 4, 7 missiles, and he can either add 1, 12. Oof. I think he needs to Explosion this turn.
I agree.
He needs 3 out of 4 shots on it if he uses the Ice Barrier, so the extra 1 from the Explosion is very relevant to him.
Yeah, I think he has to. And also, with no minions on the board, is there any just straight up damage that is going to kill you without the Ice Barrier this turn? Because you know Mali's gone. And the swipe as well.
Oh, huge outcome for DrHippi in that situation. Does take care of the Arcane Giant. And now Amnesiasc has 2 Feral Rages in hand for these 2 Flame Wakers.
Prepare yourself.
But they can only play 1 at a time. So he's decided it's time to flick the switch, flip the table. It is Yogg time. We have seen some nonsense this week happening from Yogg-Saron.
Yeah, and a Healing Wave onto Amnesiasc. Why not? It's going to really help him out there to buff up his own health back to 30. Charge. Okay. Oh. This seems pretty good. This is my high-level assessment of this Yogg so far.
I mean, who can blame you? High-level analysis kind of goes out the window when you play Yogg-Saron. Even that's actually not terrible, right? It's trade 2 Feral Rages for another card. That's not actually the worst thing that could have happened. And the charging Yogg-Saron being able to deal the rest of the damage to this Flame Waker actually makes that a very successful Yogg-Saron for Amnesiasc.
Yep, looking really good. Hang on, wasn't the Flame Waker on 1 then?
Yes.
Do you not think it was worth saving the health on the Yogg? Just using hero power on the Flame Waker?
Well, the Yogg had to attack, and it can't attack face because of the charge nerf.
Yeah, but you just pass.
You just pass.
I just mean, 3 health is suddenly a bit more of a closer range to actually get it killed off. It's probably going to make tons of difference. The mirror image is going to be a last-ditch attempt for DrHippi to be able to survive, but obviously we know the secret is Ice Barrier as well.
Yep.
So it'll kind of negate at least 1 attack from Yogg and maybe keep him a little bit safer for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it looks like Amnesiasc went for a minion there. Thrallmar Farseer was the pickup. And as they continue to throw just invisible cards at each other, the swipe that we couldn't see the entire time since it was upside down finishes the game, bypassing the Ice Barrier effect. And Amnesiasc, probably the most impressive player in terms of his play yesterday. So far, continuing that level of dominance. This is looking like a great tournament for North America at the moment, it has to be said.
It pains me a little bit deep down, but you cannot argue with Amnesiasc's performance so far, and these are not simple, straightforward games for him to have played versus DrHippi so far in this series as well. but we're going to see if Amnesiasc can continue this stomp of DrHippi so far right after this.
So you're back? Again?
Again.
Nice hair.
Nice hair. You too.
No mohawk? No?
No.
It looked really good.
I don't think so.
So, I drew you because I was a big fan of you when you won. I was happy that you qualified.
Thank you.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
It is.
Could you sign it for me?
Yes.
Okay. In white. DrHippi, XD.
Привет всем, меня зовут Артем, я из Украины. Приехал болеть за меня на чемпионате мира.
Okay, guys, you got us. The real reason TJ isn't here. He's quit his Hearthstone career to pursue his art career. Is starting off with that signed picture of DrHippi. Very impressive.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. He draws me some pretty pictures in paint while we're sat at this desk sometimes. He's an impressive young artist, if I say that, to say the least. But back in the game, Amnesiasc, only a couple more games to win to pick up his spot at BlizzCon. And although incredible first 2 days performance from the North American players. Both of the North American players we've seen today have fallen short, so it's Amnesiasc that's flying the flag for the quick route through the upper bracket all the way to BlizzCon. And he'll be hoping, for his sake, for North America's sake, that he can get it done, whereas DrHippi holding the entire strength of Europe on his shoulders as everyone else has fallen down early.
Yeah, and we are going to start game 3 as a hunter mirror, and both players having a lot of explosive traps knocking around, but we'll see who gets on the better end of the mulligan, as this is very heavily decided in the early game, as both are pretty aggressive lists.
Yeah, I mean, early game dominance is huge, not only for control of the board, but also for damage to the face, because as soon as you get a health advantage in this matchup, every minion that you play essentially is a threat that your opponent must deal with, whereas you just get to be the guy hitting face every turn.
Yeah, definitely. Very early on, there is someone who's going to be the aggressor and someone who's going to have to be very, very reactive and try and just, really flip the roles in one turn. Normally happens quite heavily here. But the opening for Amnesiasc with the Secret Keeper is really going to lock out a few options for DrHippi, as whoever gets the Secret Keeper down first, unless you can follow up with a freezing trap, the rest of your secrets just feel kind of bad.
Yeah, and this is an obnoxious opening for the person that gets it, but luckily DrHippi does have the answer with the Fiery Bat. This is actually important. It looks like a pretty simple decision, but Amnesiasc could have played the Explosive Trap, buffed his Secret Keeper up to 2-3, taken the trade. Even then, there's a 50-50 chance of the Fire Bat still finishing the snipe on the Secret Keeper. So if he could have had a guaranteed way to keep his Secret Keeper in play, we might have seen him go for it just because of how irritating that minion is. But combined with the Fiery Bat 50-50, he just felt that it just wasn't the line.
Yeah, because then you've just, activated or at least equipped the Explosive Trap for no real reason.
Exactly.
You're not going to get any benefit out of it, at least straight away.
And we saw yesterday the dangers of just playing traps for no reason.
Yeah, and now there's a few options here for DrHippi. I'm kind of leaning towards a Secret Keeper into Snake Trap myself. I did like that option. It sort of naturally makes your board wider unless there's a very direct response in the form of a quick shot or kill command for the Secret Keeper. And it means Amnesiasc has to really think about his turn as well.
Yeah, I think he also has to consider Unleash the Hounds in that situation, though, is the problem.
But then you trade in the Juggler into a 2-3.
Right, yeah. It's still happening, but yeah, there's definitely a consideration of that. There's some answers for it for sure, so DrHippi just goes ahead and takes a more solid development. And I can't, every time I see this card get drawn, I just have to smile. There, the Wolf Rider is back, Raven.
Good old Wolf Rider to the face.
Yeah, this is unique to the list that the Virtus Pro guys have brought. DrHippi are playing one Wolf Rider. DrHippi and Neyman are playing one Wolf Rider, one Argent Horse Rider each in their lists, whereas Amnesiasc is just going purely with the Argent Horse Riders. So, I mean, Wolf Rider, what can you say? What a bro.
Yeah, sometimes you just want that extra damage.
Yeah.
And this is probably not one of them, though, as this is not really the board you want to play Wolf Rider onto. That Juggler being a massive pain here.
It looks a little bit silly right now, huh? It looks like I really wish that was an Argent Horse Rider.
Yep. And this is one of the reasons as well why I kind of liked the potential. Oh, okay, Wolf Rider, why not?
Base!
Base!
Yeah, always.
Hippie, you're a god.
Wolf Rider does not trade. If there is one minion that lives the life of the Twitch chat meme, it is Wolf Rider. Wolf Rider is not built for trading.
Yeah, and something, very seriously as well, Hippie is ahead on health.
Yep.
And a lot of the time, even though he seems behind, bow equipped, Juggler down, Amnesiac's turn now, even though he seems behind in terms of the overall team state, if you can push enough early damage, hero power and a bit of burn normally ends the game before your opponent can catch up.
Yeah, and there's actually just no potential punish in hand from Amnesiasc. The minions were just not there to play, to snipe down the Wolf Rider. But from Hippie's side, he might even have considered the idea that, well, if my opponent has to play minions to try and snipe down this Wolf Rider, I'm sat chilling on Explosive Trap Unleash. So, my hand has a ton of game against my opponent, flooding the board, trying to throw knives around. But Amnesiasc instead just goes with the Freezing Trap, which is going to return this Wolf Rider as another source of 3 damage for DrHippi, even though it costs 5. That's just a relevant source of extra damage that he has in hand now.
Yeah, if it was killed off, it's better than not having it. Having,
right.
5 mana. It's very similar to the Cat in the Hat as well. When that gets bounced, you have it's 5 mana, but it's also a stealth 4/2,
yep.
which is actually pretty good.
Yep.
One of the differences as well in these lists is that DrHippi is playing the Snake Trap and Amnesiasc isn't. So there was no potential fear for DrHippi there in terms of how he lines up his attack to bounce. It wasn't going to proc snakes and then kill off the Wolf Rider to make that very awkward. But now finally, Secret Keeper is going to hit the board. Explosive Trap is down, and DrHippi just trying to stabilize a little bit because that bow with the repeat charges is a nightmare in this matchup.
Yeah, that's right. And now there is a lot of bluff potential to the Secret coming down. I talked about this previously. DrHippi has a much larger variety of secrets in his list than Amnesiasc does, which raises his bluff equity significantly. He can set up situations where he bluffs particular tracks at particular times, and also just puts doubt into his opponent's mind into how to sequence things. So there we can see the Snake Trap in his hand. That trap that he played could have been Snake Trap, which would then punish the trades happening. Instead, he played the Explosive Trap, which punished the face attack.
Yeah, Amnesiasc is playing a much more sort of narrowed down version in terms of secrets, but he's playing cards like Infested Wolf, Barnes,
Yep.
for much more minion heavy and more push late game, which is probably more of a nod to facing a bit more control matchups where you want repeat guaranteed damage. But Hippie's just going to go all out with his list. And Amnesiasc has got a lot to think about now. Explosive Trap kind of feels okay, except he's going to give him another charge on the bow, which is great. Doesn't kill the Secret Keeper and only knocks the shield off the Squire.
And not only that, it raises the Secret Keeper up to 3/4, so he just ends up tanking even more damage from it at this point. And Amnesiasc thinks he has a potential race situation available to him. I've listened to, watched and listened many of his practice sets, and he's always counting, always calculating how much damage, how often he can get there, whether the race is in his favor. So he clearly sees a race situation in this situation. We're just leveraging the fact that he has bow and his opponent does not right now, which is a huge advantage for him. And yeah, he's just going to go and just see if he can win this race.
Yeah, completely agree about the bow, because this is not a matchup where, DrHippi not having the bow can choose to, okay, I'm just going to not attack and then negate the potential secret procs until you feel you have to attack with the bow. It's not going to happen, because when you don't attack, you don't smoke, and then the deck that does also smokes will just win. So there's no options there for DrHippi, although double secrets this turn is going to be pretty nice. That Secret Keeper getting big. 5/4 and out of range of bow, most importantly.
Yeah, huge amount of damage coming through here from DrHippi. Amnesiasc might just have to reevaluate the race plan here. Can he really race that 5/4 on the board? It's out of range of the quick shot as well. Argent Horse Rider picked up, so he
Doesn't
does
know
now.
what the secret is, though.
He doesn't know what the secret is. He does potentially have Horse Rider quick shot into the 5-4, but there's so many things that can potentially go wrong with that.
Start off with the attack with the bow. The attack that is always going to happen.
Yes.
So, you know, straight away it's like, right, one's explosive. My bow is always going face. Let's do it. And then evaluate and then plan afterwards to see what's going to happen. There is one more secret, and the problem is, even if he attacks in quick shots, well, the attack in's going to create the snakes. So he's got rid of 5, and then there's going to be 3 minions back, and there's no Unleash available from Amnesiac because he doesn't run it in his... Oh, he does run it. He does, okay.
It, yeah.
I nearly missed it for a second there.
Yeah, he's playing jugglers, so...
yeah, that was a good point.
I think Amnesiac here might just be looking for a way to find himself a lethal, see if that's his highest percentage over 2 turns. If just ignoring these minions and hoping DrHippi doesn't have the damage, because he knows one of the 2 cards in hand right now is Wolf Rider, which costs 5 mana and is not lethal in this situation. No other card can be played alongside that, really, that threatens to kill him. So he might just be trying to find a way to go here, but Freezing Trap is a card that plays into that.
Oh, he's got face, okay,
Yep.
so
I think this is
DrHippi,
right.
That's lethal. It's going to be game with the Unleash and the Kill Command and the gigantic Secret Keeper.
Yeah, it doesn't even need the Unleash in the end. Just the 3 damage from the Kill Command is good enough. But yeah, I think Amnesiac took the right line there. Based on the information he knew about his opponent's hand, he knew that there would likely need to be exactly a quick shot or a Kill Command to finish him off of 1 card and 1 draw, since he knew exactly what the Wolf Rider was.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad, for us at least, that DrHippi's put one on the board for Europe. Isn't going to be a sweep, although again, just yet another extremely close game.
Yeah, incredibly close. These are 2 of the highest quality players in this entire tournament, at least regarded so by their peers. Other players that we haven't had as much exposure to, like Jason Joe, have been coming out and impressing us, but there's a BlizzCon spot on the line right now, and this is the standard of play you would expect in a game that directly qualifies you for BlizzCon.
Yeah, and after a series this close, I think we all need a minute to just relax, so don't go anywhere. Just get yourself ready for the next game, and we'll be right back.
The Hearthstone World Championship is sponsored in...
Do you feel a lot of pressure having practiced with some of these, bigger names in the Americas region?
I don't know if I feel pressure so much as like pride. It's almost like I'm carrying the torch. Like a lot of my friends worked really hard this year, like Nostum, Chalky, Frozen, like Muzzy. I had a lot of respect for how hard they worked and how much they improved throughout a year. So I feel like almost a sense of like NA pride, like I'm kind of carrying the torch for the grinders.
How important is prepping a lot? And do you think you're on another level than other players as far as your practice regimen goes?
I think I definitely worked the hardest, or maybe not the hardest, but I think I worked in some balance of the hardest and the most efficiently and the best in preparation for this tournament. I think there's a big misconception about hard work. I don't think it means just grinding away all day, every day, like mindlessly. I think hard work has less to do with grinding and more to do with having a strong mental state and making sure you're on focus.
Do you have any potential plans for the money, parents permitting? But you could go to school 4 times with $250,000.
Yeah, depending on where you go, for sure.
Would you go to college 4 times?
No, TJ.
You could be in college till you're 32.
Like how old you are?
I'm 26.
Okay, so the theme there, stay in school, guys, but maybe not go 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, probably not until you're 32. That doesn't seem like the right play, but I found it really interesting. Listen to Amnesiac there talking about, don't practice long, practice smart, right? Like, I think that's a really great mentality. It's something that I tried to take into account when I was playing competitively as well, and even just preparing for events like this as a caster. It's the same philosophy, and I think it's paying dividends for him. His practice methods, which of course he's not revealing entirely, are definitely paying out for him over some of the players that just sit and play 12 hours every single day just grinding ladder.
Yeah, definitely quality over quantity is the way forward in terms of practice regimes, but it is 2-1 in this series at the moment. Amnesiac is ahead, but DrHippi did get that last one just about in yet another close game, and these guys have few of the decks left. How do you think the decks that are left over are actually going to line up versus each other now?
Well, we still just haven't seen those Shamans come out yet, so that is really what it's going to come down to in the end. And I think, you know, both of these players know it and just holding that big finale on for the end. But it's going to be the Face Hunter coming out yet again, and the players that have brought this deck might be starting to regret it a little bit, because if you look at the data analysis of this tournament so far, Face Hunter actually one of the weakest performing decks that have actually had a large sample of games so far. So sure, Face Hunter picked up a win in the last game, but it was a mirror, so it kind of had to. Outside of that, the deck just hasn't been performing very well.
There's a new rule, draw.
Yeah,
exactly. no one gets the win. But yeah, completely agree. I think the mid-ranges versions of the Hunter have been performing a lot better.
A lot
overall,
better, yeah.
like, actually performing great. But gonna kick off this game with a cat trick. I love doing this versus Druid, because if they have Wild Growth, they're never not gonna play Wild Growth, but you gain a 4/2.
And then as the Druid player, like, ah ha ha, joke's on you, idiot, I don't have the Wild Growth. Wait, I don't have a Wild Growth.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Yeah. Catch 22 for the Druid. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, there's even pretty good follow-ups now, although he did use the cat trick with, you know, general mana, and it didn't get reduced down by these Cloaked Huntress. At the end of the day, a 3/4 is kind of awkward to deal with anyway. You know, outside of a swipe, it isn't really very clean. And if your opponent is actually going Wrath Hero Power to kill a 3/4, then you know, the Juggler looks a little bit more free, or you might see both Wraths come out from DrHippi in the next 2 turns, and then suddenly you've got a pretty free run to be able to take this game.
Yeah, the interesting thing as well is when your Hunter opponent does coin Wild Growth, or coin Cat Trick against you as a Druid, you know what secret that is. There is no other secret that would be coined out. There is 0 bluff value in doing that, because 100% of the time you will throw your Wild Growth into that Cat Trick anyway, even if they do play it. So there's no bluff equity in making that play. So DrHippi right now, and you can see this from the play that he made, knows that there is a cat trick in play.
Yeah, and DrHippi is very, very swiftly falling behind because of that cat trick. We saw what would have almost always been a Wrath onto that Juggler just get ignored, because he just kills the Juggler, creates a 4/2, which is very, very scary indeed. And again, DrHippi going forward with this plan of not proccing the cat trick and just playing Fandral on the board and saying, okay, Amnesia, you're the aggressor here, but are you going to be so aggressive that you're going to ignore Fandral, which actually just breaks games by itself?
Yeah, this is just DrHippi playing Fandral onto the board and just saying, please be Ascension Shieldmaster. Please be Ascension Shieldmaster. Please have Taunt. Don't ignore this. But Amnesiasc, honestly, just might be entitled to do so. There's some terrible things that can happen, Nourish in particular. But with the cat trick spawning, he's probably confident he can force through so much damage here. But it would be ambitious, to say the least, to leave Fandral Staghelm of all cards alive.
Yeah, it does have options, really. You know, the quick shot into the Grandmother wouldn't be terrible. You'd still get the Juggle from the Grandmother, and you'd still develop in minions. The cat trick's still live. So I actually like the quick shot here. As you said, whenever you leave Fandral up, unless you're literally about to kill them, nightmares can happen, and that's the way he loses this game with this fantastic opening.
Right, and that's the important thing to me, is that Amnesiac's hand right here, this isn't a face hand. This is a trade hand, basically. Like, he wants to get board presence, and he wants to be able to push all these minions to face in one big turn where the Druid whiffs for a turn. So if his hand was just full of kill commands and Leroy and who knows what else, then sure, maybe it would have been viable, but the trade definitely has to happen based on the texture of his hand in that state.
Yep. Now, DrHippi has got a bit of an awkward choice here. The cat trick is just a nightmare for him to deal with. He could Nourish and then just, you know, have a rough turn now to get a better turn later on. But the problem is later on might not happen, because you can just die in 2 to 3 turns.
If you take an absolute battering if you play Nourish here, I think DrHippi just has to keep trying to contest minions, and he's doing that with a 3/3, ramping himself up some mana, looking towards some of those higher value plays that he does have in his hand. But he's still a long way away from even pairing together spell damage swipe, which is something that he can use to take care of a cat trick if he's able to combine another spell with it.
I'm really interested in this turn, actually. Oh no, that's completely why. Okay. I was just making sure. If there was a snipe available in Amnesiac's deck, then tracking into snipe would have been really good going into turn 7, because the snipe would have been free, but he doesn't have access to the snipe, so his options are limited, as we mentioned in the earlier match, by his secrets. They are very straightforward in the form of Cat Trick, Explosive, and Freezing Trap.
Yeah, 2 of each, as opposed to the list that DrHippi and Neyman have been running in this tournament, which has a sprinkling of all of them. But I mean, as we said earlier, this was a board-based hand that Amnesiasc has. It's a slightly board-based deck that he's brought to the tournament with those Infested Wolves and the Barns in there as well. So this decision to just play for board over and over again, protected by that Cat Trick, which is almost like having a counter spell in play, right? Yeah. It's basically like locking your opponent out from removing your minions. So Amnesiasc's line in this game, really solid, and the Druid has just been kind of scrambling for these suboptimal plays every turn.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually just never been a point that DrHippi can proc the Cat Trick in anything he'd be even reasonably okay with. Nope. Like, it's always like a nightmare scenario. I mean, I was just for a second looking at Nourish into Wrath into Yogg. As in, you know, because seriously, you know, you're getting pushed in this kind of position.
Yeah.
Well, you'll just die. Kill command, there's an option straight away from Amnesiasc. It's of course going to take his time, but again, with the kill command, look at all the damage available, and Amnesiasc could just this turn. This might be the turn where you ignore the minion.
I think this might be giddy up, as Admirable would say. I think this is time to send all the damage downtown, picks up the kill command, sending everything, not even a moment's hesitation of trading into the Emperor. This is definitely the turn to flick the switch, and look at that backup that he has in hand. 2 cards threatening to deal damage.
Yeah, and the fact as well is with Infested Wolf and Unleash, he's going to get that kill command off if he really wants to.
I mean, that Geddon is potentially nuts in terms of just answering the board, but the repetitive damage he'll take himself is such a nightmare because Wrath here, Wrathing on a 3-3, Wrathing on the 3-4, you will proc the Cat Trick in the process, and then Baron Geddon becomes a full sweep on the board.
Yeah, I mean, he could Wrath, trade into the Infested Wolf with the Emperor, and then just proc the Geddon. Yes, he would lose the Emperor, but he gets a full clear on the board, which at this point I feel he just needs.
Yeah, right. And also, proccing the Cat Trick first is important because you also can potentially try and fill up the board here. Oh, no, you'd be 1 minion short. Never mind. Don't worry. Ignore me.
I do try to sometimes.
Many people
but
do.
It just doesn't work.
So yeah, we're going to see Geddon trade here, and then the Wrath on the 3-4 most likely. Playing Geddon first to soak some of these knives as well, which is going to have a potential impact. And now this Geddon damage. This Geddon damage could be so crucial.
But the benefit for Hippie, at least, is he has 3 goes, 4 with the natural turn draw with Nourish to be able to get into, you know, Feral Rage, and maybe even a Raven Idol, you know, into something to be able to heal himself back up, so this Geddon 2 damage per turn isn't detrimental to his life.
1 damage off right now for Amnesiasc. Doesn't have the mana to fit in the hero power, and doesn't have the mana to play, well, basically any 2 of these cards alongside the hero power is what he would like to do to win the game. Cannot do any of them 1 turn off, but the bow is a really nice draw to be able to secure some extra damage over 2 turns. To, you know, now he's thinking about, all right, if there's no Feral Rage, I probably win this game. The bow helps him to beat Feral Rage, which is really, really important.
Yeah, the repeat damage with the double durability is huge, but DrHippi does have a chance at just saying, hey, Yogg, do some work. Oh, there's a Raven Idol, though. Okay. Do like the Nourish first. Oh, no, you'd Raven Idol first, right?
If he nourishes, there is no way he can ever bail out and Yogg. If you Raven Idols, he still has a chance to assess, but that doesn't really have to play into your consideration because you can decide right now whether you are ever Yogging this turn. Hippie decides no, does pick up the Feral Rage, does still have access to Raven Idol to pick up even more healing at this point because, as we said, that 1 Feral Rage, he'll go up to 10, go up to 11 if he hero powers, back down to 9 from the Baron Geddon. There's Unleash, Kill Command, and a hero power coming back at him, so it's just not going to be enough.
Also, you know, if he can get additional healing from this, Claw's going to help. Malygos is at 7.
Yeah.
And he has a Living Roots.
Yeah.
And he can continue to draw with the Nourish, so he could actually work towards killing his opponent in a turn or so.
He's going to go to 10, so now the decision for him is Claw or Hero Power. And he
always take the extra 1 here. Yeah.
Yeah, puts himself up to 12, so that is 5, 8, 10, 11. Is Amnesiasc 1 damage off again? Oh no, he lowers himself back down to 10 with the Geddon. Unleash, plus the Kill Command, plus the Hero Power.
That's it.
It's 10 damage.
Yeah, Amnesiac does it and takes this game just about. DrHippi so close to being able to stabilize from, frankly, an extremely rough opening, but Amnesiac, a fantastic job of leveraging that cat trick and then continuing the pressure and knowing exactly when to strike as well. He killed the Fandral, too much of a threat.
Yep.
Skipped the Emperor and said, right, I got this.
What did I say right at the end? The bow pickup being so important. No Feral Rage, I win the game. Bow, that helps me beat Feral Rage. That's what I'm going to set up now. Keep sending damage to face. He got Feral Rage and a Claw. Still wasn't enough to pull himself out of range. Amnesiac is right on the hill of saving the day, this one particular day at least for NA, and getting one of their players straight through the top 8 of BlizzCon.
Yeah, the pressure on both of these players must be absolutely immense here, but we are going to find out if the young Savage himself can win one more game and book his spot in the top 8 of BlizzCon right after this.
Everybody here has experience now, but you have more experience than a lot of the players.
Yeah.
Do you think that you playing multiple times gives you an edge against some of your opponents?
Yeah, for sure I have more edge, because especially because my hair, I'll confuse my opponents.
They'll look across the desk and get distracted.
Yeah.
Do you think Europe's the best region in the world as far
Yes.
as competitive Hearthstone goes? Whoa, okay.
Isn't it?
I don't know.
It is.
If you have fans that are going to tune in and watch you, fans that maybe watched you run through, even when you took second place in winter, or fans that watched you win when you qualified, what would you say to those fans right now?
Hey guys. I'm just DrHippi.
Pressure is on for DrHippi now. If he loses a single game, he's going to be knocked into the lower bracket of his group, and he has to win 3 to be able to steal it from Amnesiac and take his spot next week.
Yeah, and role reversal. Pressure on for Amnesiac as well. He has, the hopes of America and the hopes of his friends, as he was describing in the media piece, all riding on his shoulders. So who feels the more pressure in this situation? Actually, I already know the answer to that question. We've been told young Savage doesn't get nervous.
Of course, we should have known. But he only has his Shaman left. And this, as you were mentioning right at the start of the series, is a bit of an interesting slant on the list with a good old Cobble Geomancer involved.
Yeah, and this is where the party really gets started. Both of these players are targeting Shaman, at least tentatively, with their lineup. So the Shaman's getting through with a victory here is hugely important. And the Kobold Geomancer in this list from Amnesiac is honestly somewhat inspired for this strategy that he's running, because in the mirror particularly, it means that you always have access to spell damage AoE when you want, because you can play 2 of them as opposed to just the 1 Blood Mage. The 1 extra health over Blood Mage means that it survives Spirit Claws, it survives Maelstrom Portal. The 1 extra damage over Blood Mage means that it's a totem killer, so your opponent doesn't get to have spell damage totems on the board. It's just so good in the mirror.
New favorite card confirmed for Subtle. You heard it here first, but it's going to be versus DrHippi's Mage is his deck of choice, or at least to start to mount his comeback here. Babbling Book going to kick him off with a Spellbender. Still has a lot of options early on. The Frostbolt looking pretty nice to at least buy a turn versus the Totem Golem if he really wants at this point. He could just coin out the Arcane Intellect to try and get more answers, but I feel like you really want to slow that Totem Golem down. You don't really have many opportunities going forward to do it.
So you thinking Frostbolt? You know what happens when you make that play, right? Like 100% of the time.
Healing Totem.
Yeah.
Always happens.
All jokes aside, it's definitely superior though. Like 75% of the time, you're in really good shape in an actual serious world. But like I said, 25% of the time it works every time.
He does have Blast available to him though as a backup plan. So DrHippi was not completely blown out by that outcome. Definitely not what he would have liked, though, because I imagine this turn he really would have liked to just play Babbling Book Hero Power.
Right. It also means he just gets like straight up 2-for-1'd by a Totem Golem. He does have Arcane Intellect and stuff in his hand to make sure he stays high on resources, but yeah. Definitely an unfortunate outcome for him, and these Babbling Books that he keeps playing, you know, they're useful, you know, draw a card effects, but the fact that Amnesiac had access to the insanely powerful Spirit Claws has meant that he's not taking care of it so far. And Amnesiac's choosing to hold on to it, saying, you know what, that Babbling Book just dies to Maelstrom Portal or my AoE anyway. I have 2 of them in my hand. Why would I waste such a high-value resource like my Spirit Claws weapon on that 1-1?
Yeah, not going to get too much work done, but also the Frost Nova off Babbling Book can get some work done later on, though. Being able to stall out what's almost always, or feels always, a full Shaman board is actually huge. You know, you begin to be able to battle back versus, you know, cards like Thunderbluff that can actually really buff up the whole board. There is actually no Bloodlust in this list from Amnesiac. Feels it's just not going to be enough. I'm guessing in the mirror, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, no Bloodlust. He needs to find 1 extra card spot for that extra Cobalt Geomancer, for example, where, you know, normally it's just 1 Blood Mage, so he needs to open up another deck slot. Does have the Ragnaros in there as well, so he's not willing to sacrifice that. He's only playing 1 Manatide Totem, but that second slot is going to the Argent Horse Rider, so it's a very tight list in terms of spots. Just didn't feel like Bloodlust was good enough to make the cut. And honestly, the Shaman mirror is so board control based. You're both so good at clearing each other's board that Bloodlust doesn't often have too big of an impact.
Yeah, and in the games it does, you've probably won anyway.
Correct, yes.
But, you know, this is looking very rough. And, I mean, DrHippi has a lot of cards and a lot of options going forward. And again, just as always, Tempo Mage has the ability to really combo together multiple cards late game to get some really big swing turns available. But Amnesiac is already so far ahead. The spell power from the Drake enabling his Spirit Claws for additional damage if required, and has great refill, and even the Ragnaros towards the back end in a couple of turns, being able to really push out the damage.
Yeah, and the secret in play from DrHippi, of course, anytime a secret is played, you go through the ringer playing against Tempo Mage trying to work out what it is, because there's no natural secrets in the deck, so Amnesiac has to go through the pattern here to decide which it is. Decides not to test for too many of them in the end, rules out a couple, like the face-based secret and effigy, so that does limit it a little bit, but still Amnesiac with some hidden information as to what that secret is from DrHippi.
Yeah, I think that was due to the pause after the Horse Rider. It was like, oh, play Horse Rider, see what happens. It's like, right, okay, now carry on. You know, that was stage 1 of the turn, and then you build on it going forward. It's gonna be Violence. Oh, what minion are we gonna get?
Ooh, unlucky.
This just upsets me. I miss the days when Buzzard was in all its glory. 2 mana.
This is just genius forward planning from Blizzard is what it is. By nerfing Starving Buzzard all those months ago, they balanced Firelands Portal by creating this weak outcome.
I miss those days of I'm just going to reminisce for a few minutes. Just leave me on my own for a second, so. But no, the Buzzard definitely not what you want from Firelands, considering there are so many great minions you can get from that spell. But DrHippi isn't being completely overrun in terms of damage at the moment. He has got, you know, the board's starting to build up, but just only 3 power on the board, minus the weapon, of course. And yeah, does have quite a lot of options to be able to start culling this board whenever he wants to.
Right, and Amnesiac has to have in the back of his mind as well that might be just be Ice Block in play, so if he does just want to make a huge push for damage at some point, he's got to make sure that his board position, his resource position is stable enough to survive an Ice Block afterwards, but hopefully at some point he'll get the knowledge of what secret is in play.
There's the hero himself, the Cobalt Geomancer, number 1.
Oh yes.
Into the hand, so again, as you know, you can see this right here, just Sorin as your Drake. There's always a chance of the... Oh my god, what's the spell power tome called?
The spell power what?
What's the spell damage tome called? That you can roll off the Shaman.
Wrath of Erto?
That's it.
Yeah, that's right.
There we go. I just completely blanked on that one. Yeah,
I'm going to be honest, I wasn't sure what you were asking me. Sometimes I just don't understand your accent. I'm going to be real.
Please, we need to be united on this front, at least while we're over here, Sol. But yeah, I was just saying, you know, we had Azure Drake, there's always chance of the totem coming out. Now there's Kobold, so it really does just reinforce the fact that spell damage is just on demand in this Shaman deck. And finally, Amnesiasc actually discovers what secret is the Spellbender, and he's going to eat a lightning bolt to the face.
Yeah, so he wanted to get a spellcast there just to check for counterspell as well. Now, there you go. This is one of the points I brought up. On-demand AoE with spell damage and on-demand 2/4s. The young savage does not roll 2 once.
Is this what happens when you play this with Kobold Geomancer? It just gets you an injured Kvaldi?
Yeah.
That'd be so insane. Oh god, everyone's going to play Kobolds on ladder now, aren't they? We can see it coming.
You're going to get endless hate tweets saying, you lied to me, I rolled it and I got a blood imp.
I'd like speed to Amnesia.
Yeah, fair enough.
Pass them all over to Amnesiasc, but Ragnaros is going to be the choice, and frankly, DrHippi didn't have many choices here. The Flame Strike, the board is not valuable enough here for a Flame Strike at all. You need to save that Flame Strike for later on. The Frost Nova, not really going to stall out too much damage either, so I like getting the Ragnaros down as soon as possible to try and get some damage worked up. But as your Sai Hex into whatever Amnesiasc wants, plus thing from below for 0 mana due to all the totems been played so far in this game.
Yeah, you can see this time from Amnesiasc a bit of respect given from the Flame Strike. The downside of a play like this, and this is something players often overlook, is when they choose to slow play against AoE, against decks like Warrior or Mages running Flame Strike, is that they open themselves up to spot removal instead. So in this situation, if DrHippi was to have Firelands Portal, that would be a huge blowout for Amnesiasc because it would swing the board state significantly. DrHippi only runs 1 Firelands Portal and it's already been used, so Amnesiasc knows that the big blowout spell is only Flame Strike at this point, and that's what he can afford to play around.
Yeah, and also the benefit is he's just simply pushing a lot of damage or representing it on board at least. And look at his refill! Rag, Feral Spirits, Flame Tongue Totem, you know, he has anything he wants, plus the card he's going to draw next turn to help refill the board, even if it gets cleared. And that is the true power, I feel, of Shaman at the moment, the sheer pressure it can consistently put on.
Yeah, their refill ability is just insane. There's always this crushing feeling of just, you know, you've just cleared their board for the 3rd time and you're finally like, okay, now this time he's got to be out of gas, and then just yet again it comes down. There's a Drake, that Drake picks up a Feral Spirits, and then suddenly there's a board all over again, and it's so hard to consistently keep their board clear.
DrHippi didn't play Arcane Intellect. Wanted it as an option to combine with Flame Waker,
Correct,
I guess. But my worry is with Flame Waker, Arcane Intellect, that's 6. You have 4 mana to spare, so yeah, you know, you can Fireball, Missiles, Frost Nova. You know, not all of those, of course, but I guess like Flame Waker, Intellect, Frost Nova, Missiles is a plan for next turn. I don't know. I think it has to be really to just skip a potential turn of 4 mana there, not being able to draw more cards.
Yeah, there's also the possibility of drawing Apprentice, which can make the whole thing a lot happier next turn. But yeah, it's a slightly weird looking play because obviously the Intellect can pull you into better tools to combine with your Flame Waker. So definitely a little bit of unusual play from DrHippi, but he sees a line here. But Amnesiasc sees a line. It's a line pointed directly at Jaina's face. And this damage there is the Apprentice draw, though. Is this going to be enough to swing this board state? It's a big ask.
It really is, because it would have been a great turn and potentially the stabilizing point for DrHippi until the Ragnaros hit the board.
Right.
Because now he can't do enough, and this is the problem of a card like Ragnaros is, on a wide board, it's like, you've got to clear all the minions and kill the big guy, and often you do not have enough to do both. If you just kill Rag, and you know, he could just kill off Rag, and yeah, I guess he can kill off Rag and Frost Nova just to survive a turn.
Can he? What am I missing here?
Hang on. Maybe he could with missiles potentially.
Okay, sure. All right, yeah.
Missiles. He can do it to a certain extent.
Possibilities, and it looks like that might be the plan. It looks like that is what DrHippi sees as his best potential outcome here. He got it! He actually got it! He nailed the Rag. Wow.
Told you it was the right place, all.
I mean, I will never doubt you again, Raven.
Done. Confidence restored. But look! There's just more minions, and there's even more damage potential following up in the turns going forward. But DrHippi does have a Flame Strike next turn. This Frost Nova from the Babbling Book, as we mentioned earlier, actually does a lot of work versus this deck.
Yeah, and this is a point I wanted to make when you were talking about the Frost Nova originally, is it's often this situation where it shines when you pick it up from Babbling Book or from Kabbalist Tome. This exact situation where you need to soften a board first to then Flame Strike it the turn after. I'm thinking of Thunderbluff Valiant, for example, has 6 health, so you can Frost Nova, you can soften a couple of things up, then you can Flame Strike to sweep afterwards. That's the setup that we're seeing here from DrHippi, and we saw this yesterday. We talked about it in the pre-show as well. DrHippi has seen out consistently. Whether that, you can really break down the maths and the probability as to whether they were the right outs, but he has seen ways to salvage games where he looks unfavored, and he is committed to them. And that's exactly what we saw with the Arcane Missiles on the previous turn.
Yeah, and even this attack from Amnesiasc is a tough one because he clears the spell power. The damage he takes to face he doesn't care about, but it's the charge of the weapon. Because that, his opponent's on 10, 3 damage is quite a lot.
It's huge, and it looks like it is just Flame Strike stations for Hippie. I think he, again, just has to consider whether he needs a Flame Waker on the board right now, whether he needs to run that risk to try and net some tempo, but DrHippi going to play it safe from here, try and play a bit more grindy against the Shaman in this situation, but that's a dangerous line to take because, as we said, board gets Flame Striked, here comes the refill. This is Shaman 101.
Yeah, and then for next turn, there's Flame Tongue if the minions survive. There's Cobbled into Lightning Bolt just for an extra point of damage if required. This is looking pretty horrible, but this is yet another huge turn for DrHippi. If he can get the blowout turn here and clear most of the board, he can really have a decent chance as at least surviving one more turn, because Amnesiasc's kind of, running out of refill. We were saying that Shaman's really good at it, and it has been, but it still only has a limited amount of cards in the deck.
2 more spells, meaning 4 more missiles, plus the 3 from the Arcane Missiles itself. Still has mana available to ping. This should be a full board clear in most reasonable worlds. There it is. DrHippi has swung the board. But what did I say? Spell damage AoE on demand when you play Kobold Geomancer.
Oh, and even the follow-up next turn now with the Thunderbluff, additional points of damage from those totems, so it's kind of huge. Oh, even more spell power. Why not?
The young Savage doesn't roll other totems. Except Healing Tome when he needs it.
He doesn't, he doesn't randomize totems. He just selects. Like, Justicar True Heart is always active when Amnesiasc is playing Shaman, clearly.
So, still, refills again for Hippie as well. We've talked about the power of the Shaman refills, but this isn't bad with the Drake either. Flame Waker number 2 could be another huge tool to swing this board back, but how scary is the Kobold Geomancer? Is it Forgotten Torch scary?
Well, if it's not, he dies.
So
this is a huge decision. This decision from DrHippi will either allow him to continue on in this game at least, or it will knock him into the lower bracket. This is it. This is the one decision he needs to make.
You can definitely see how someone would talk themselves out of casting Forgotten Torch this turn, because it's just a 2-2. Next turn, you have Flame Waker plus Forgotten Torch plus Fireball for a potential blowout turn. This is good discipline from DrHippi, keeping himself in the game for now, but still an uphill battle to be fought.
Yep, by no means is he out of the woods yet, as there's just even more damage available. The Mana Tide as well, the one-off in Amnesiasc's deck is really going to help, like going forward to continue to pull up the threats out of the deck for DrHippi to apply the pressure. And this Wrath of Air Tome getting the work done with the Lightning Bolt, being able to clear off the Azure Drake as well.
He needs 2 shots to hit 1 minion here. I mean, otherwise he's just going to be in the world of hurt. There's 4 power on board. There's 4 potential more with the Flame Tongue.
Flame Waker go!
He needs a double hit. Doesn't get it.
That's not going to be it. And with the addition of Flame Tongue Totem, these other totems are going to end the game for Amnesiasc, and he's going to win over DrHippi 4-1 in an extremely tense series, regardless of what the score looks like.
Yeah, I mean, really, really close. I said it was going to come down to when the Shaman could pick up a win, and Amnesiasc was able to do it at the first attempt. It could have just as easily taken him several more, but honestly, Amnesiasc straight through the upper bracket, books his spot at the World Championship top 8 at BlizzCon, and he is looking borderline unstoppable right now. His play is seriously on point.
Yep, and we can get a few words with him now of what he thought of this set and what he thinks about getting his spot at BlizzCon next week as he's standing by with Admirable.
joined by the winner, Amnesiasc, 4-1 in your set, and now through to the top 8. First of all, congratulations on that. There's a couple moments here that really stood out to me, but the biggest one was your mage versus DrHippi's hunter. You played the opening very slow with a couple of mana worms. Walk us through the game plan in that situation.
Sure, yeah. So double mana worm, mirror image, the one mirror image in my deck. That was a pretty fortunate opening for me to hit. But when he played 3 traps, I was trying to think through all the possibilities, and I was like, okay, I never proc these. At least not until the mirror images have been used, because I didn't want to waste those on the explosive trap. Because if I had, then the 4/2 stealth minion would have attacked me. So I needed to let kind of things settle, maybe let him not attack for a couple turns, and then I knew that I was going to have to make 1 2-turn lethal setup. I was tracking his hand. He was playing on a very low hand size because of that. So I knew the card on the left was either a trap he couldn't cast or just straight burn. So it could have been Wolf Rider, it could have been Leroy, in which it was in line, it was Leroy. But so I was trying to think of all the ways to beat those types of cards. I knew it wasn't Unleash, which I eventually played into the turn before I won. So I was like, okay, it needs to be second explosive trap, or he needs to draw that or Unleash. So my odds here to win are good. So that's why I went in on the turn I went in, rather than trying to go all in earlier where it wouldn't have worked.
Worked out beautifully for you. Then, of course, now you've solidified that top 8 spot. You've got a few days until that happens. What are you going to do between now and then to make sure that you're prepared in full?
I'm certainly going to review all these matches, and I'm going to do what I did before, just make sure I'm practicing a lot, practicing with, in my opinion, the best players in the world, my practice group, and yeah, I'll be ready.
Well, I certainly think you are. A fantastic performance, and again, congratulations and good luck in the top 8. Our third